Well, as you probably know, a lot of people in IT are behind the scenes people. They're not customer facing, but learning great people skills is critical, I would argue, for anyone in any company. The ability to talk one-on-one or one-on-10 at a boardroom is a skill set that you need to develop if you're going to be successful in this world. Somebody who knows that very well is my next guest. Merv Jersak is in the studio. He's a speaker, he's a podcaster, and he's a consultant. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Now, you have an IT background as well.
Yeah, I spent over 40 years in the industry as a consultant, meaning I traveled to my contracts sites to do consulting with them. Some of my projects were 2 years, some of them were as many as 6 years, that I would travel on site every single week to meet with my clients and work with them.
Now, do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
If you look at my Myers-Briggs profile, I'm right on the line, but
Okay.
a little more to the extrovert side, yes.
Awesome. And have you discovered that a lot of people in IT need your services?
Many people in IT need my services. And the reason I say that is because we're trained right from the time we go to school to the time we actually begin to work in process, and we're trained in technology. And of course, that becomes insular,
Right.
whereas we're serving clients. And so in order to serve clients well, and Harvard Business Review will tell you this, you
Right.
need to learn those essential skills that help you kind of get your message across to your customers and to your team.
Yeah. And if you look at some famous examples, Mark Cuban got to start in IT,
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, they all had to learn the skill sets of talking to their teams and to the public. So maybe talk to that engineer or that IT guy out there who's like, oh, it's not for me, it's not for me. Why do they need to lean in?
They need to lean in because from a perspective of the client that they're dealing with, a lot of times they think the client will listen to them and learn their language. What we as IT people need to do is learn the business language of those that we're serving. And it's that sort of walking into that situation that you need to understand more about the people you're working for, as opposed to just giving fancy, good IT solutions.
Sure. And you have a very popular podcast. Tell us about the podcast.
Yeah, it's called Project Managers Coffee Chat with Tim and Merv. I have a colleague. He and I have worked together. We put in 3 years worth of 1 hour podcasts,
Wow.
which is kind of like our encyclopedia. That's
Sure.
our learning base. But we have now gone, our 4th year is on 20-minute podcasts, and we focus on the human aspects of what we do as project managers.
Yes.
We assume that you're technically competent, but we want to instill things like emotional intelligence, communication skills, entrepreneurship, innovation, creativity, that sort of thing.
Tell me what a perfect client looks like for you.
A perfect client for me would be those insulated organizations, either they're serving people within their own organization, or they are project people for hire, like I was.
Yes.
Where you're focused solely on the solution rather than on your client. So I go in and I teach people how to work with the client in the client's language,
Yes.
how to work with your team so that you're putting people over process.
Sure. And is it pretty easy to teach people not to speak in geek speak? Because, I mean, they can get way down in the weeds if they needed to.
They can, and it is easy if they're willing to learn. And most people, once they realize how they're coming across, and that's the emotional intelligence piece.
Right.
Once they understand how they need to come across, then they're much more receptive of what it is that we're showing them.
Without naming the client, do you have a favorite client story or organizational story of this was the problem I solved?
Well, I actually just came back from California last weekend, and I was invited to come in and work with the managers and senior managers in a way that helped them address exactly what we just talked about. And we specifically looked at emotional intelligence, and we specifically looked at personality profiles in terms of how I come across to people, and therefore how I can read people as I communicate with them. So it was a great, it was a full weekend. We just had a good time of learning that, and people walked away with a new appreciation.
Outstanding. So in the little time left, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, do you have a website?
Well, I do. It's called peoplefirstprojectmanagement.com.
Outstanding. You've been an amazing guest. Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
You
Thank
bet.
you.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.